Hey, I'm Hayden Glass. I'm here with Sarah Gambles, an elementary teacher at Bank School. Aside from teaching, Sarah has another passion, and that's filmmaking. And Sarah's actually currently working on a feature-length documentary called Armor. Sarah, could you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Sure, hi. I'd be glad to tell you. Actually, the film is called Armor, and it's a semi-autobiographical portrait of growing up biracial in the South. How feelings towards race mixing has changed, if it has or has not. Kind of just a study of human nature and also a therapeutic journey of my own.
Okay, so it sounds like this is definitely a project you're invested in, like a personal way, that you're passionate about. Could you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for where it came from?
Sure. I was actually born in Honolulu, Hawaii in the 70s, and to a black father and a white mother. And Hawaii is such a melting pot of cultures from around the world that I never really knew anything about my family as far as being different, or whether or not that was a way of life. There was nothing different about it to me. So when I moved to the South in the 90s, things in the South were, obviously it was post-segregation, but a lot of people still lived their lives in a way that was different from the way I was brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed a lot of identity issues and things about myself that I knew I was not being authentic about. And so as I got older, especially as a school teacher, you see children hiding behind thick shields of armor for whatever reason. I realized how important it was for me to tell the story of my own in the hopes that I can change others.
So you kind of touched a little bit on the differences between where you came from originally, Hawaii, and then moving up to growing up in Alabama. So is there any specific things you remember from that, just to share a little bit more about your experiences and where this is coming from to inspire the film?
Sure. Basically, fundamentally, people are people around the world. But I think the biggest difference between growing up somewhere like Hawaii and then moving somewhere like Alabama is just as simplistic as your neighborhood. When I grew up in Hawaii, I had Japanese neighbors on one side of me. I had neighbors that were from India across the street. And so, we just had a diversity of cultures. My sister married a Hispanic man. My other sister married a man that's Hawaiian Chinese. So, in Hawaii, it's just like you meet someone, you fall in love, and that's just it. But in the South, I've just had instances of, what I would consider to be even covert racism.
Mm-hmm.
People who remove their children from schools because they're in an interracial relationship.
Right.
Things like that just were, not that I'm passing judgment on anyone about that choice, it's just that it was disarming for me, coming from such an open-minded community, moving into somewhere that's just it's totally non-existent. Not to mention, there just aren't a lot of cultures, different cultures in Alabama. So I just thought that was an interesting twist and something that I wanted to explore because I think that now the South is growing in diversity, and I wanted to shine a light on that.
Okay, yeah, that was actually one of the questions I was thinking about following up next. And obviously, you don't want to spoil too much of the movie because we still want people to go and see it.
Right.
But how much do you think we've moved since that time of you growing up to, especially now as you as a teacher, you can really see these kids and how it's affecting them? How do you think that their, experience is different from yours?
It's kind of funny because, if you think about, I'm almost 40, and working with children every day, that number one, racism is not something that is inherent. Children are taught to see people for their differences instead of their similarities. But I do think the younger generation is changing. I do think the South is changing in such a positive way. And, every time, unfortunately, you do see occasions where you're 2 steps forward, another step back, or a step forward and 2 steps back. But, I do think that things are happening slowly, and I think change does have to happen slowly so that people aren't as resistant to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see some improvements there. But in the faces I teach every day, I see so much diversity, so much more than I ever saw as a student in a classroom myself. So that gives me hope for the future. And on the flip side of that, the crew that works with me, they're also young people, university students, and they're so helpful, but I see hope in their eyes as well in the way that they've approached this project. So it's been great.
So how exactly did you get started finding people?
Oh gosh, finding a community of filmmakers in a rural Alabama town is difficult, I'll be honest. But I think the saving grace for me has been that we're in a college town, and so with campus organizations with departments of speech and theater, communication and fine arts, the Hall School of Journalism. There are people out there that know 1,000 times more than I do about camera operation, lighting, sound, editing. So all I really had to do was have a vision, and these wonderful people came out of the woodwork to help me. So one person, that person introduced me to someone else, and it was just a wonderful snowball effect of building a crew that helped me put this together, and it's just been seamless ever since.
Right, okay. So where exactly are you and the crew at in the process of the filmmaking right now?
Yeah, we've pretty much wrapped all of our shooting. We have been fortunate enough through some kind donations and generous offerings to be able to travel to different places. We traveled to Hawaii and California this summer to kind of piece together my early stages of life.
Okay.
And we're still actually shooting. We shot a little bit this weekend, some more local B-roll, some historical stuff. So we're still in the process of putting the finishing touches on our actual filming, but
Right.
we are currently in the editing process.
Okay.
So it's pretty exciting to watch it all come together and turn into something at this point after we've been working on it. It's probably been 2 years.
Oh wow, yeah, okay. So tell me a little bit more about just that production process, because this is your first film, right?
It is my first film.
So how has that been, just having to, I guess, probably learn a lot as you go?
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about the production process, how it's been these past 2 years or so.
It's been really amazing. You know, so much has changed in filmmaking just since I started in the industry, because in 1999, when I finished at Troy, I actually moved to Los Angeles, and I worked in the entertainment industry for 3 years. I worked as a publicity assistant at NBC. I worked as a production assistant at John Wells Productions, he was an executive producer of 3 shows at the time at Warner Brothers. They were producing his shows for network television. So I had a lot of production experience, but so much has changed, especially with technology. I mean, like when I left the industry, I mean, there was no such thing as half the cameras and memory cards. I mean, all of the stuff that we use now is something that is completely foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's been really interesting to learn about. But as far as the whole production is concerned, putting it together, starting out with just a simple outline of where I wanted to go. I started with this huge project, and it's turned into something that's been, you know, I had to condense my ideas, I guess is what I'm getting at. So, but it's just been a wonderful experience. You know, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about people.
Okay, well, have you faced any opposition, any roadblocks along the way?
Nothing as far as the actual production is concerned. Probably the 2 biggest obstacles, one being that people are not super forthcoming when it comes to answering questions about race because of the sensitivity of the subject and where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably been a small stumbling block. It took me a long time to put together people who wanted to be a part of the film, because people are really private about it. People don't want to share their true feelings because they're afraid of judgment. And on the flip side of that, families that are, you know, interracial or multicultural families, a lot of times they don't want to be in front of a camera because they're afraid of how the world will view them. So that started out as a small obstacle, but more than anything else, money. Money, when you're trying to do something of this magnitude, is a tremendous roadblock. I mean, for everything from equipment to travel expenses, it's difficult, but I have to be honest, I'm proud of how it's come together.
Okay, so where did all that funding come from?
We did some small-scale crowdfunding through an online organization, but other just private donations. A lot of it's just out of my own pocket, which is not too deep as a school teacher.
Right.
But, you know, I went from a Nissan Armada down to a Honda CR-V just to cut costs, living expenses, because this film means so much to me that I'm willing to nearly go broke to see it made.
So can you tell us, what is the anticipated release for the film?
Yeah, absolutely. The anticipated release date in my dreams would have been a year ago, but really and truly, it takes a long time to put something like this together. And I hope that we will be able to release the film at least to local private screenings by late summer, early fall. We would also like to be able to take it on the road to some film festivals, start out regionally and move outward from there. But it's going to be, again, a matter of cost.
Right.
And we'll have to see what some of the entrance fees are for some of the film festivals that we want to go to. But again, I really feel like it's a story that should be told. I think that the world's changing, and I think that a lot of people will find something in this film, so get it out there.
If you could just summarize briefly into a couple sentences, what exactly, if somebody were to watch this film, what do you want them to take away from it?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because the film, again, is about the journey of a biracial woman in the South. But I actually had someone recently that said, will anything else, any other armors be discussed in the film? You know, my armor is that I've always been overweight, and I've had people say, you know, lots of different things are things that they've struggled with. And I'm hoping that through our journey, the journey of my own and the people that are in the film, that other people will get something out of it as well.
Right, kind of a universal theme.
Yeah, I hope that it has that universal theme. I hope that people latch on to the idea of, you know, what's beneath your armor and shedding it, not being afraid to show it. Because who we are beneath it is okay. And, you know, if people show an interest in you, more than likely it's what they're seeing shine from beneath that armor that they like, and it's okay. It's okay to be that person. So we'll see where it goes from there, but you know, it'll just be an interesting idea, because I think that it's just a timely film. I mean, we're coming into an election year, and I think it's really interesting because for years we've heard people refer to the current president as our first black president, but what people never say is that he's biracial. So we actually have our first biracial president, and I think it's just really interesting, regardless of what your political views are, that it's a film about someone just like me, just like him, you know, people that have had to choose a side and so on. So
well, Sarah, here's to hoping that your audience can get that message from the film. Thanks for joining me, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to keep up with the progress and see the eventual release of the film, you can check out their Facebook page at Serafina Films, or you can check out their website at serafinafilms.com. Thanks.